on. Huh? Okay. So, I have a new roll sheet. Well, maybe you'll be able to Xerox it and get a different thing to hand out. So I don't think it's worth calling 150 names or something. Any problems that you're facing? So we said that we have an exam next Thursday. Does everyone agree to that? Okay. The old days during the Vietnam War, they decided not to grade people and stuff, but they found out it didn't work too well. People stopped doing any work. So they went back to grading about 20 years ago. So you're the heirs of the return to grading. I think it probably keeps people on their toes. I mean, I'm not a great enthusiast for exams, but I'm not an enthusiast for not having them either. So probably keeps people moving. We need people to keep us moving. So what will we put on this exam? I think basically, I'll talk more about after we finish today, but basically so you can think about labs, questions or something to me. I think you're holding a session, right, Noel? Your usual drink 'em up session, studies and so on?
Well, I think a lot of them get something out of it.
Yeah, what time is your session?
7 o'clock on Tuesday.
Okay, you're not conflicting with a debate or anything like that.
Oh, are we?
No, I don't think so.
Yeah, Tuesday.
Which debate?
Is there one Tuesday then?
I don't look at Fridays. If one Fridays, I don't think it's
Friday. No, I don't think you're conflicting. Anyway,
I
those
thought-
debates are so dull, I don't think you're missing anything.
Well, I think they do 3, don't they? I don't know. I don't know. I think there's 3 though.
No Monday night football or anything, that's pretty dull these days too. I got tired of Monday night football about 25 years ago. They just didn't get my message. So okay, Tuesday you're gonna hold, where do you meet them, in the saloon?
In the Nugget.
Yeah, in the saloon, okay. Right, and we'll have 2 out of 3 questions, like I said last time, and if you'll write something about what you think about the movie Milagro, or Carlos Castaneda, or the Bhagavad Gita. There may be some comparison of these things. There may not be. Basically, you'll hold forward. You can't really say much in an hour and 15 minutes anyway. So I should think whatever you get out that sounds reasonable will sort of make you survive. The more reasonable it sounds, obviously you'll probably get a little higher grade. The more insane it sounds, the lower your grade will be. If nothing gets out, well, then it probably doesn't make a good impression. So the main thing is to get some thoughts down on the paper. That's how to get through the exam. So that's all one is asking for, some thoughts that have something in some relative matter to do with the subject matter we're asking about. Isn't that right, Noel? Just something that looks like you looked at this, thought about it, done some work in connection to it, and have some insight to impart. And then a few short answers just to keep you on your toes. I don't want to give them away now because there's so few things that I can imagine to ask you about that would be short answers and not multiple choice, something you'd have to identify, something like Krishna. I don't think I'd ask you that because it's too obvious, but Krishna, 2 sentences or less. A Hindu god that's considered to be a man also, or a man who's considered to be a god, who teaches the science of meditation or yoga. That would be sufficient to identify who Krishna was, I think, to show that we know you know who you are. Having said that, it won't be Krishna. All right, that's the kind of thing we'll ask. And we'll have 3 of those exams throughout the term. One now, one another third of the way through, and one at the end. And that's it. Okay. Any, God, you guys are all, that's good. All right, let's see. So we left, where did we leave off? Do you remember? What chapter was we on in this? 12. It's getting boring, isn't it? Maybe we're missing something here, but it's getting pretty repetitive. Let's just look a little more at this. 12. Those who set their hearts on me and ever in devotion worship me and who have unshakable faith, these are the best yogis. Those who worship the imperishable, the infinite, the transcendent, the unmanifested, the omnipresent, the beyond all thought, the mutable, the unchanging, the ever one, who in all power of their soul and harmony, and the same devotion for all who find in the good of all beings, they reach the truth in my very self. So you learn about the self through Krishna, and then through that you get in touch with the end supreme. They surrender all works to me with pure devotion, meditate on me, adore me, and soon deliver them from the ocean of death and life in death, because they have set their heart on me. So to be liberated from the ever-recurring cycle, life is considered to be suffering, you see, not pleasurable. I mean, most of us don't want to be liberated from life, really. Most of us say, this is the only chance we have, let's get let's do the best we can with it. But these folks probably had they felt life was a pretty sad affair. And also death was even worse, apparently. So the main thing was to get out of life and death both. So that's one way of putting it in. As you can see, these religions don't speak to me too much. But I don't consider myself necessarily the final word or representative. So you have to be the one to judge these things, how they speak to you. I mean, I just, the reason I sound negative is I don't like sacred cows. I don't like to make sacred cows out of whatever religion is. You know, I think people have to think for themselves, and I also think new religions are necessary for that. You can't keep holding on to the same old tired cliches. People will grow and circumstances change. And it's time that new things came into being. But that's a personal feeling that I have. Let's look here now in the next part of this 13 here, line 10. Same devotion to me. He's very egotistical, you know. Keep on devoting, but it's a symbolic devotion, so I don't think we can blame poor Krishna here. A constant yearning to know the inner spirit, a vision of truth. What's the end of wisdom? When a man knows this, he goes beyond death, he is Brahman. I think you get the idea. If you get in touch with Brahman, you don't die anymore. You don't even die at all. You go beyond death. So everything here is aimed at conquering death. That seems to be their main worry. I guess a lot of us worry about that too. Light of consciousness comes to him through infinite powers of perception. He is beyond all. He supports all. He is invisible. He is one in all. He is the light of all lights. So, okay, we get it. 24, line 24. Some by the yoga of meditation, or if you like, by the benefit, I don't like the word grace, it's too familiar in another environment, by the benefit of spirit, see the spirit in themselves. Some by the yoga of the vision of truth, others by the yoga of work. So these are the different kinds. I think the yoga of the vision of truth would be that Sankhya yoga. And the yoga of work would be the karma yoga. One is an intellectual process, the more is a much more dutiful process. This book is advocating both in a way, but primarily the dutiful process. Because in the end, Krishna is going to tell Arjuna, get out there and fight. Well, I don't see much more that's new here. 14, last line, 27. I am the abode of Brahman, the never-failing fountain. 15:1. This is the tree of transmigration. These later lectures don't really tell us anything new at all, do they? Here's one on 15, line 16. There are two spirits in the universe, the perishable and the imperishable. The perishable is all things in creation. The imperishable is that which doesn't move. But the highest spirit is another. It's the spirit of the Supreme, Brahman. The God of eternity pervades, sustains all. Because I am beyond the perishable and even beyond the imperishable. You see, this is beyond both perishable and imperishable. It's another or alternate universe. He with a clear vision sees me as the Spirit Supreme. He knows all there is to know and adores me. So your whole life, you see, is directed at getting this enlightenment. That's why you see the yogis basically very thin, involved in spiritual activities. They don't have time to become businessmen. So they're not driving around in Mercedes-Benzes and things. All they're focused on is comforting suffering and the rebirth process. And for a long time in India, that was the focus of things. But I think India is changing too. I mean, there's a lot of bourgeois people in India. A lot of shopkeepers and middle-class people. I've been in India back when I was your age, and I can tell you, it was nothing like people imagined it to be. They didn't have any respect for these yogis at all. They used to sort of, people I was with used to drive by in their, you know, maybe they'd have an American car back in those days, not a European car, in their Chevrolet or their Pontiac or whatever. And if a yogi was walking on the side of the road, they'd splash water on him. They had no respect for them whatsoever. They all considered them total fakes. And there was no awe at all from these, you know, upwardly mobile, what we would call middle-class yuppie type people. And that's not the whole. I mean, of course, some in the mass, of the poor mass, would refer to them, but not the kind of movers and shakers had no respect for them. Had total contempt for them, laughed at them. This was back in the days of, you know, Go-Go or Twist or Elvis Presley or whoever, and all their children were dancing all these Western type of music type things, and they went to one party after another, and if they saw these kind of religious figures, they would just laugh. It was laughable. So, and on the streets in India, this is a very, you know, I have been there recently, but this is an old impression I'm getting. There was a lot of violence. So all this peacefulness you hear about, it wasn't on the streets. People fought, people pushed each other, people got angry over little things. You always see little fist fights breaking out. People would be arguing over space if they were sleeping outside, where they were sleeping, and other people would push other people away and stuff. So, you know, this idea of the West, of the serene East and so on, it's just, it's nonsense. Nonsense. It's just an ideal that people imagine. There may be pockets of this, but society is very harsh, very tough, and it's not full of this, you know, serene meditation ethic at all. That's our Western. That's my impression, and I'm sure today it's even more go-ahead with the computer age. We meet a lot of people from the Indian subcontinent here, and there'll be people in this class from there. And I'm sure they don't want to admit this, what I just said, this lack of respect, but I'm sure even in their families and environments they come from, this lack of respect is widespread. And they're not interested, most of them, in this. They want to go to Berkeley, they want to go to Harvard, they want to get a scientific profession, they want to get on the internet, they want to become computer engineers, they want to become businessmen and things like that. The main ethic that I found from every country from Vienna to Tokyo is bourgeois living. That's the main ethic, except for Islamic fanaticism. That's bourgeois living. The modern capitalist world, get ahead, the internet, being a yuppie, is the governing force in most societies that I encountered. Not just our own. In fact, our own is much less than you find as you go further east. Taiwan, Southeast Asia. Shopkeeper ethic is really the governing force. And that's my rough impression. Why am I saying that? Because I don't think this book is practiced by a large part of the people. And yet we're reading it because this is our image of what that world is. But it is the product of long years of study and spiritual activity, and it did produce this insight. So I think it's not invalid. Just saying that they don't follow it any more than people here follow it. And I never met a middle-class English, I never met a middle-class Indian yogi. Most middle-class people in India that I met were writing novels to please American society, to please American tastes, and were #1 on the American fiction bestseller list. You'll find half the novels in the American fiction scene now are written by young Indian women. They're very ambitious in terms of Western cultural value. And most of these novels are about love and love stories and, different things of that kind, social issues. If anyone wants to gainsay me, I'd be happy to take your disagreement, but you know what they say, an old expression, in the land of the blind, the one-eyed is king. So since we're all probably not very familiar with this area I'm speaking about, and I've been there, so that makes me the one-eyed. When you get one-eyed, then we'll talk, and then you may stay there a long time, and you'll be the two-eyed. So you'll be the dominant force. So until such time that you guys have a personal experience that you can put against the one I just described, you're going to have to defer to mine, even though I may be wrong. Okay, 18. I like to try to be careful about claiming perfection or unique insight there. This is about renunciation again. We've heard about that. 1817, the chains of selfishness. We've heard about all that. Then about all this laziness and too much pleasure. 37 onwards. Up to 42. The works of Brahman are peace, self-harmony, austerity, purity, all the good things, you see. 46, a man attains perfection when his work is worship of God. I don't think we're learning anything here. 54, he is one with Brahman, with God, beyond grief, desire, his soul is in peace. By love he knows the truth. We're not learning anything here. 59, if you will fight the battle of life, because in selfishness you're afraid of the battle, if you will not fight it, you will in the end have to. Because you are in bondage to karma, your own past, and in your delusion. So now he's talking again to Arjuna and encouraging him to get on with this fight. Let's stop the freeze frame and get the battle moving. So finally, we've got to have a conclusion here. The writer finally gives it to us as if it's an afterthought. Oh yeah, I forgot to end this. Line 73. By the grace I remember my life, and now God is my delusion. Okay, I'm learned. I'm ready to go. My doubts are no more. My faith is firm, and I can now say, what you say, it will be done. And now Sanjaya suddenly reappears after about 10 chapters of having, done a disappearance act. Thus I heard these words of glory between Arjuna and the God of all, and they fill my soul with awe and wonder. Maybe they fill his soul with awe and wonder, but they don't fill my soul with awe and wonder. By the grace of the poet Vyasa, I heard these words of great sonnets. I heard the mystery of yoga taught by Krishna, the master himself. Well, okay, Krishna, therefore, is the yoga teacher. He's the God, but he also teaches yoga. I remember, King, I remember my words of the holy wonder between Krishna and Arjuna, and again my soul is racked with waves of joy. I remember the vision of glory, the God of all, and again joy fills my soul. I'm glad he's happy. Wherever is Krishna, the end is yoga. Wherever is Arjuna, who masters the bow, there is beauty and victory, and joy and righteousness. That is my belief. Okay. That's it. Any comments? Reactions? Well, we don't even get the battle resuming here. Maybe that's in another part of the poem after this, and this is just exerted from the, don't forget this is part of a big epic, the Mahabharata. So I haven't read the whole poem. I have to claim ignorance. I don't want to act like I know it all in that regard. But maybe the battle does resume. But in this particular work, we don't even really get an idea what Arjuna does after this. I mean, does he pick up his bow and kill a lot of people? Is everything resolved? Is he okay after this? Where does Krishna fly off to? Does he stay in the chariot, or does he go up to heaven with Jesus? I mean, does he do an ascent or something? Where does he disappear to? This is the problem with the ancient god tales. They're fun, but one shouldn't really consider them to be reality in any culture. Oh, in any case, we assume that the end of all this is that Krishna taught Arjuna to do his duty. J. Robert Oppenheimer, who supposedly read this when he was head of the Manhattan Project, he could learn something from this, because maybe he had doubts about what he was doing. I don't think he probably did at that time. He was very ambitious and he wanted to get ahead and make a big name for himself, and probably he saw fascism as a big threat, so maybe he didn't. But when he was all through it all, maybe he had doubts about, the fact that he unleashed the greatest, most horrific military weapon in the history of the man's existence. And maybe he took comfort in the Bhagavad Gita and these conversations where he was basically told, you're a scientist, you're supposed to do your duty. You can't stop and say, is this right, is this wrong, should I be involved in this production, shouldn't I be involved in this production? You see how relevant it could be to what he was doing. Don't you think? It could be very relevant to someone who has questions of this kind. Because this book is basically saying, okay, seek spiritual enlightenment, but don't let that get in the way of the performance of the work that you're required to do in this world. Isn't that really, I think, the gist of what finally comes through? Now, if you want to learn individual yoga, then you've got to go to some specialist. I think if you go up to LA or even here in Long Beach, you'll find a whole host of them. Just open the phone book, look for yoga specialists. I think you'll find them next to the tattoo artist specialists and the massage parlor people. And there'll be lots of specialists who can help you get on the way to doing this. But we're talking about more intellectual activity. I'm obviously not a very good propagandist for this sort of thing. You must be good. I think it's good for discipline. I really do. Well, any kind of exercise is good for that. You get a personal trainer. Teach you how to work on the treadmill. I can't afford one, or I'd be more fit. But if I could get a personal trainer, I should have paid one. No one's volunteered to do it free for me. Okay, I want to look at Walt Whitman. What changed faces? Primarily, I do it for show a different kind of religiosity in America, secular religiosity. Not that he has any movement or that people follow him particularly, but he represents a time in American culture and history where religious feeling was linked with personal identity and political behavior, and it was all one big jumble. Now, it's been diminishing lately, but after 9/11, there was a lot of that in America that we witnessed here too. So I remember the days after 9/11. It was in the fall, and we were in one of these classes, and really, you know, there were candlelit processions. People were out on the streets, stopping cars with candles, honking their horns, American flags out, and so on. And that's the picture of life Whitman gives in his poems, because he's writing this in the midst of the Civil War, and primarily the most interesting poem, finally probably, at the time of Lincoln's death, and it was the same sort of picture of grief and patriotism mixed together with almost a religious outpouring of American feeling. That's what you got after 9/11. You know, people regret that it's passed. Everything passes. Look what happened after Lincoln's death. The country fell to pieces for about 35 years. It was harsh. All the worst things in the country came out after that. Whoever killed Lincoln, by the way, was extremely successful in what he had intended to be. Disrupt the country in a horrific, tragic way. It took us 100 more years of civil rights agitation and strife to try to sort of get back to where they would have been in 1865 if people like Lincoln had been able to direct the aftermath of the Civil War. That was probably one of the worst moments in American history. People think John F. Kennedy or 9/11 and things like that were the worst moments. I think probably the assassination of Lincoln was probably the worst one. I don't think the assassination of Kennedy, though it's a tragic event, it's very gruesome, meant a lot in the history, mean a lot in the history of the country in terms of what they represented one way or the other. But the assassination of Lincoln had a tremendous deadening and debilitating effect on the whole country. I don't think the country, as I said, came out of it until people like Teddy Roosevelt 30 years later. And then they really weren't out of it until the Civil Rights Movement after World War II with Harry Truman. That's really when they started coming out of it. So that's a long time. That's almost 100 years. So it's a very tragic moment, and Whitman, I wouldn't say celebrates it because there's nothing to celebrate, but he responds in a poetic, religious way to it as a man who loves America. Now we have a lot of these classes that are mixed ethnically speaking, as you see. Just look around you, and people from a lot of different cultural backgrounds who are coming in, if you like, to this melting pot. And many people ask, what should we do as Americans? What should we be? What should we read? I would think, that's why I read Whitman in this class, if you want to read anybody or anything to get the spirit of America, I don't think there's any better person than Whitman. I don't think there is any person even near him to read. I mean, you can read, if you want to read, Pat Robertson, okay, you know, or some of these evangelicals or something. That's what you think the spirit of America is, or you want to read Martin Luther King, or any of those people who represent one aspect of American culture. That may be the aspect you're interested in. Okay, fine, or the beatnik poets or something, or Bruce Springsteen, the Boss, or whatever. But none of these people really give you the feel of America the way Whitman does. He said, I've never heard of this guy, he said. Or I just read one poem in high school, Captain, My Captain. And usually that's what they teach you, don't you? If you read anything by this guy, it's Captain, My Captain. And that's probably one of the worst poems he ever wrote. You know, it's a nice poem, you don't forget it, but it's just trite. In terms of great poetry, the best stuff he wrote, they don't touch. And that's my beef with high schools and secondary schools. And since a lot of you guys, you say, you got a lot of beef. Yeah, I do. But since a lot of you guys are going to be teachers, at least a third or a quarter of you may be teachers, I think that I feel good telling you this, because maybe you'll get into the schools and slowly change these things and insist that they read this kind of stuff in the high school level, maybe even the junior high school level. This is just like, to me, elementary American stuff. If you want to make a unified culture, this is where you begin with someone like Whitman. Again, the problem is, I think, has been that they perceived him as being somewhat gay. That wouldn't be a problem so much today as it might have been 25 years ago. And I don't think he is gay in the sense that that's his only sexual attitude. He's just sexed up. And that, I think, would appeal to young people who probably have the same problem. So I don't think that's a drawback in today's world. Someone who is sexed up and doesn't know how to release these pressures in their being. And he does it through poetry. So he doesn't care if it's men or women, and it wouldn't matter to him one jot. He's just got these tremendous urges. I would say that he's horny, okay? Or frustrated, is that a more polite way of putting it? He has these tremendous urges, and I think that shocked people in the 1870s, 80s, 90s who were trying to be free, and therefore he got sort of buried, pushed down, and only the polite poems of his were read and not the raunchy ones. But showing the raunchiness of America, you see, we are pretty raunchy. Most countries are, not just America. India's pretty raunchy, I think. Showing the raunchiness of America is a pretty realistic picture of this country, and that's honest. So there is that too. So he shouldn't have been shunted aside. So when you get into the schools, you make sure that they read it, because the other side of it is, see, I have a beef with the beatniks because they don't love America. They just criticize, and they're into their own personal indulgences that they want to be allowed to do, whether it's sex, whether it's drugs, homosexuality, whatever. They want to be permitted to do these things, but they don't show any love for the country. They're not volunteering for the army or anything like that. They're not going to go out and fight the country's battles. They're not going down to the Civil War battlefields and nursing the wounded. They're not going down and, writing letters for all the poor people in the hospitals and so on and so forth, or looking for dead, lost friends or relatives or so on in the actual aftermath of battles, all on his own. So, it is like a 180 degrees difference between Whitman and them. So he may express all these things, but he also has love, tremendous love for what this country is and what it represents. And I think that's a positive thing. And it can be communicated to young people. So you can say, hey, you're giving him a big build-up. Yeah, he deserves it. He deserves it. He really does. If there's a national poet in America, it's him. And you say, well, I've never heard of him. That's why we're putting him in this class. If I have any influence at all on young people, or some of you aren't so young, it's to make you aware of people like this so that you can communicate it to others. And I can only read a smattering of these poems. So you say, you're giving him high praise. You didn't praise any of the other people like this. Yeah, that's right. I do give him high praise because I think he deserves it. He's not a, excuse the expression, bullshitter. And he's honest, and yet he's full of decent, noble sentiments and emotions, and he's trying all the time. Okay, that's my introduction to him. The poems that I have chosen to read are representative ones. 3 in all, it's not very much. This is his book here, Leaves of Grass, and it's a never-ending compilation of works over his whole life. And you say, well, where did it end? Well, he doesn't think it ever does end. And there are different editions of it. There's an 1856 edition, there's an 1870-something edition, there's an 1880-something edition, and pardon me, he just keeps adding to it. He just keeps adding to it. And that's both his strength and his weakness. Because really, I don't know if you've ever tried to do anything creative, any of you. But sometimes you can be very creative. And then 6 months, 2 years, 3 years later, you're just imitating yourself. You've already had that burst of whatever it is that moved you to either write a good letter, paint a good picture, make a good photograph, etc. Sing a good song in your soul, but then you try to get it back again. It's sort of like trying to recapture your youth. You really can often never recapture that thing. So sometimes it's best just to let it go and not try to keep on doing it. So Whitman couldn't let it go. He had to keep on trying, and he'd keep on trying to recreate that urge. So a lot of his poems, and they're not all good, are corny. Rehashing like this Bhagavad Gita of the same thing over and over again. Childish even, perhaps. Because he kept on trying and trying and trying and trying, and he never wanted it to end. I think he made an oath. We see it at the beginning here in one of the poems. He said, "I now 37 years old begin." See, there's hope for all of us. He didn't begin till he was 37. "I now 37 years old begin, promising to cease not till death." So, when you make an oath like that, that's the problem. Writing something down publicly, you tend to try to keep it. Some people say, you shouldn't say something if you're not going to do it. Well, he said it, and he intended to carry it out, and he did. But maybe he shouldn't have tried to carry it out his whole life, because some of the later poems are really, I think, rather shallow imitations of himself. But he tried, and we have to give him credit for that. But when he's good, and he says it, I think, he sent his poems originally to the intellectual doyen of American thinking at that time, Ralph Waldo Emerson, who was a famous essayist, philosopher, writer, taught at Harvard, places like that, and was the upper elite with people like Henry David Thoreau and others of this country. And he sent his poems to him. Now, usually I have people send their poems to me, and they want me to read them and answer them. And I don't usually answer most of them because, first of all, I often feel they're competing with me in whatever they're writing, and I get tired of trying to see someone trying to say the same thing I'm saying, so that's a bit of a bother. And secondly, I don't want to hurt their feelings by saying something negative. So I usually just don't say anything. But Ralph Waldo Emerson made the mistake of responding to him. And he said, I think we have it in my introduction. I don't know, may have a different copy than yours. There are a lot of different copies. But in my introduction, I actually have a copy of the letter Ralph Waldo Emerson sent to, I think I have it if I can find it, to Whitman when he received these poems from him. Let's see if I can find it in here. I'm not doing so well. I'm looking for it. I'm locating it. Oh, here it is. Let's see. He says, this is in 1844. Waldo Emerson had written an essay in 1844 called "The Poet," where he had sketched a picture of what he considered his ideal poet should be in America. And he said at the end of this essay, he looked in vain for the poet he is describing. Well, Whitman must have read that, and in 1855, 11 years later, he sent his poems to Ralph Waldo Emerson. And Emerson wrote him back, I am not blind to the worth of the wonderful gift of Leaves of Grass that you have sent me. I find it the most extraordinary piece of wit and wisdom that America has yet contributed. Now this is from the big, this is like getting a letter from Einstein or something. Or, I don't know, who's that Prime Minister of South Africa? Yeah, someone like Nelson Mandela or someone like that, some people that people admire and look up to. I find it the most extraordinary piece of wit and wisdom America has yet contributed. The guy didn't even go to college. Yet he didn't even go to a university. He hardly graduated high school. I am very happy in reading it. So Emerson is very generous. As great power makes us happy, it meets the demand I'm always making of what seemed the sterile and stingy nature, as if too much handiwork, too much lymph in the temperament were making our Western wits fat and mean. I give you joy of your free and brave thought. I have great joy in it. I find incomparable things said incomparably well, as they must be. I find the courage of treatment which so delights us and which large perception only can inspire. I greet you at the beginning of a great career. Well, get a letter like that from someone that you look up to or is looked up to by the whole country, greeting you in such a way, I mean, that would just blow your mind, don't you think? Well, it blew Whitman's mind, and he put it in the front of his book as the introduction to his book, because he self-published his book. And I think Emerson regretted having written it to him, because he used it, as a young enthusiast would, for PR for his book. And so this is what Emerson said about me, and he blazoned it across. Look, he can be forgiven. This is actually a copy of what his first book looked like. Not in green, but he had a picture of himself here. One hip cock here, and he had a little earring in his ear. A little bit of that come on look that maybe we are familiar with these days. He is very, and this was the first edition of Leaves of Grass. And you see, if you read this, it's only got a few poems in it. Here's the actual frontispiece. I have an actual picture inside of it. There it is. There he is. Leaves of Grass, Brooklyn, New York, 1855. And mine is falling apart. These culture comes to very the culture. And basically, the first poem is Song of Myself. That's an incredible thing. The first poem you put in your book is Praise of Yourself. Song of Myself. And not only is it, it's 55 pages long. So, I mean, that's why they don't read it in your schools. Probably the longest poem they read is maybe Hiawatha or something, some people junk like that. By the shores of Gigi where the bright sea waters flow. I remember from my classes that we had memorized, right? Oh, sir. But I don't even think they do that one anymore. But I don't know what they do, frankly. Maybe they read, trying to be hip, they read John Lennon or something. I don't know. In any case, this is 55 pages long. And A Song of Myself is the first poem. I celebrate myself in what I assume you shall assume. For every atom belonging to me as good belongs to you. I loaf and invite my ease. I am my soul. I lean and loaf at my ease, observing a spear of summer grass. Houses and rooms are full of perfumes. The shelves are covered with perfumes. I breathe the fragrance myself. I know it and like it. Anyway, this is the beginning of this poem, but he even changes this in subsequent versions. He keeps on revising. So the copy of it we have in our book wouldn't even be the same as this one here. But you see, our Leaves of Grass, I think this is, I don't know if this is the 1880-something or other edition of it. Some of you have the Penguin. I didn't order the Penguin, but they keep foisting it on me for some reason. You can see what edition that is. But mine doesn't start with Song of Myself. Does yours start with Song of Myself? No. Let's see. This looks, when was this published? He starts here with an inscription in mind. Come, said my soul, such verses in my body let us write, for we are one. That's in the dedication. Is that in your dedication? Anyway, I have it in my dedication. That should I after death invisibly return after long, long hence in other spheres, ere to some group of mates the chance resuming, counting earth's soil trees, winds, tumultuous waves, ever with pleased smile I may keep on, ever and ever yet the verses know. At first I hear and now, signing for soul and body, set to them my name. Anyway, that's a pretty corny beginning, and he signs it Walt Whitman in the beginning of mine. But the point is, he's already started talking about the body of the soul, but he finally says they are one. And so this is a religious text, even though it doesn't advertise itself right off as a religious text. It's interested in the religious things, like the things we're talking about. I told you that I thought the problem with these books like the Bhagavad Gita and other comparable mystic texts is the fact that they assume that there is something separate, that the body is different from what's within the body, and therefore as the body perishes, what's within the body continues. And that may just not be a tenable proposition. And frankly, I think the Indians are consistent, because I don't honestly think that we're different than an ant. We look different, only because our universe is a little bigger than an ant's universe. But I'm sure that an ant in his universe functions as well as we do in ours. He's just not as strong as us, and he can't defend himself against us as easily as we can defend ourselves against him. So I can take my foot and just squash him into the pavement. And sometimes I don't, because I feel sorry for him. And then other days I'm in a bad mood, and I do. And so do you guys probably too. You know, if you see the ant on your sink in your apartment or wherever you're living, you just get so fed up you go, and you squash it, right? You don't want to often, but finally you just do because you're fed up. And you're tired of seeing it there. I mean, I don't like spraying them, frankly. I think that's pretty gruesome. Ant traps, killing them. But anyway, when you do squash him, you don't think he's got a soul that's going to survive. You don't think, you just think that's it. And I think the higher beings probably look upon us similarly. We think we have souls, and I'm sure he thinks he's got a soul, the ant too. But I'm not sure that that's separate from the squashing process. And, it's just egotism that we think it is, that we think we're superior beings. And I'm not sure, pound for pound, we're as superior as the ant, given his size and his intelligence. We probably don't pack as much intelligence, relatively speaking, in the body weight that we carry. I know that my bird is smarter pound for pound than me. And his brain functions 10 times better than my mother's. And he's only about 2 pounds. So I don't even think he's 2 pounds. And the cat, well, the cat's a bloody genius. So, so I don't know, you know, about these creatures. That we're superior, I doubt. But the Hindus have a thing for that. They do believe that you're reborn in all these creatures anyway. So they've already taken that into consideration. The Hindus have. But I don't think we look upon them as big soul people. We only think we're the soul people. Well, Whitman says the body and the soul are one, and it's a position. And I'm not sure he sticks to it. He's not trying to be a consistent philosopher, but you see, he announces it. Let me read you a poem at the end of this collection, if I could. Goodbye, My Fancy. This is the section he has. There's lots of poems here, obviously, that were not in the poems he originally sent to Emerson. If Emerson had seen some of these other ones, he might not have written him that letter. So, because he's writing about anything he can, it seems to me, if I can find this. This is a poem that he writes, I think, towards the end of his life when he's kind of summing things up. I see in this thing Osceola. He's got poems to American Indian leaders in the 18th century and so on, 19th century. But here's this poem at the end of this section. This is 1890s. Goodbye, my fancy. Farewell, dear mate, dear love. I don't know what page it's on in your book. You got an index, you can find it. How many, huh? I just said goodbye, my fancy, about 4 times. Look at the index. Can you guys, well, I'm going to wait for you to find it. Farewell, dear mate, dear love. I'm going away, I know not where, or to what fortune, or whether I may ever see you again. So goodbye, my fancy. Now for my last, let me look back a moment. The slower, fainter ticking of the clock is in me. Exit nightfall, and soon the heart thud stopping. So he's towards the end of his life. He's writing to something he calls his fancy. As it will turn out, he's writing to his soul that he calls his fancy. But it also could be a poem you write to a loved one that you're leaving. Long have we lived, joyed, caressed, together, delightful, now separation. Goodbye, my fancy. Yet let me not be too hasty. Long indeed have we lived, slept, filtered, become really blended into one. Then if we die together. Yes, we'll remain one. If we go anywhere, we'll go together to meet what happens. Maybe we'll be better off and blither and learn something. He creates his own words, blither, happier. Maybe it is you now really ushering me to the true songs. Who knows? Maybe it is you, the mortal knob, really undoing, turning. So now, finally, goodbye and hail my fancy. Well, I mean, it's not a great poem or anything like that, but even at the end, then, he's writing to his soul, just as he does it at the beginning. At the beginning, he's talking about the soul, and at the end, he's talking about the soul. You could give this poem, if you like giving poems to friends or people you care about, to a loved one, because it's like the sadness of leaving a loved one. And when I first read it, I thought, of course I knew what he was like. He didn't have loved ones, but that he was writing to someone that he loved. So it's a nice little touching poem, comes at the end of his work. So it is about the soul. So let's review a little bit his life before we read this Song of Myself. We have here poems before Song of Myself. This was published in 1855, Song of Myself, and revised. Here's one right before it in this collection, starting from Pomona. He puts that before it. Again, I hope you have a book, because you really can't do a class like this without a book. And it's useless to listen to me talk about something you don't even have in front of you. So I really do remonstrate with you that you should have a book. And if you don't have any other books, you certainly should have this book. If you're trying to save money, you save money on the wrong book. This is the book you should buy, because this is something that you can cherish and keep and get some benefit from. I don't think the other books will necessarily be something you want to reread in your life. So if you didn't buy this book for some reason, and I don't know why, this is the one you should have. So I would recommend not only you get it, but you bring it. So, because there's no point reading a poem together if you don't have a book in front of you, and I see 2/3 of you don't have it, and that really, I find that painful. So I know people don't like to be hectored by grown-up father and mother figures, and they get angry. I've got daughters and sons. If I try to say something to them, they just get their back up and get peeved. So I understand that. So I say these things to you forewarned that it's not going to endear me to you. I do understand. Starting from fish-shaped Pomona, where I was born. What's Pomona?
Place?
Yeah. What place? Huh? Nah. Don't guess. Anyone know? Well, you haven't read this, I can see. Haven't even looked at it. Long Island. He's talking about Long Island. Well, a lot of you don't even know what Long Island is, but if you come to the east coast of this country, Long Island is this long jutting piece of land that goes out from New York like a Long Island. And it's a famous place on the East Coast. And why does he call it fish-shaped Pominoff? Because he knows Pominoff was the Indian name for it. He likes to use Native American Indian names for geographical features, and he was born in Long Island, or on Long Island. That's where he was born. That's where he started out, and he likes to use poetic expression. Well begotten, and raised by a perfect mother, roaming many lands, lover of populous pavements, dweller in Manhattan. He doesn't like to, he never even, I don't think he ever says New York. He never speaks, he never uses the word. He likes the Indian way. He doesn't even often say Manhattan. He calls it Manhattan because that was the Indian word for the central part of New York, Manhattan. Dweller in Manhattan, my city, or in southern savannas. He took trips down to the south, Louisiana and places. Or a soldier camped and carrying my knapsack and gun, or a miner in California. He likes to picture the whole country. Or root in my home in Dakota's woods. My diet, my drink from the spring, or withdrawn to muse and meditate in some deep recess, or near the flowing Missouri, or aware of the Niagara, or the buffalo herds, or whatever it is, or the 5-month flowers. What are 5-month flowers? May. 5th-month flower. Meaning probably daffodils. In the east there would be daffodils and lilacs and flowers we don't get in California. We're not as seasonal as the east is, or up to the Rocky Mountains. It's similar. But once you cross the Rockies, the Pacific coast climate is different. And having studied the mockingbird's tones and the flight of the mountain hawk, we have mockingbirds out here in California. And heard at dawn the unrivaled one, the hermit thrush from the swamp cedars. He'll talk about that hermit thrush in his Lincoln home. He's quite interested in that particular bird. Look here, section 6, the soul. Forever and ever, longer than soil is brown and solid, longer than water ebbs and flows. I will make poems of materials, etc., etc. 7. A lot of gab and gabble here. Omnis, let others ignore what they may. I make the poem of evil also. Here it is. That's another reason why he was such honest cats. I don't just talk about good, I talk about evil, like Howard Stern or somebody. I see he's going off the radio and going to go on a different network. Good riddance. I commemorate that part also. I am myself just as much evil as good, and my nation is. And I say there is in fact no evil. Or if there is, I say it's just important to you, to the land, or to me, as to anything else. I too, following many and followed by many, inaugurate a religion. There, he is aware that he is inaugurating a religion. But what religion? The religion of America. Descend into the arena. It may be I am destined, and that's what came out in 9/11. It may be I'm destined to utter the loudest cries. There, the winner, pealing shouts, and it's an American cadence we have. You can still read it because it sounds like the way we speak. The pauses are the same. It's a kind of rap, if you like. Rap of the 19th century. More elegant than maybe the rap of our century. And but you feel the syntax and cadence of American speech. That's what Emerson said. Each is not for its own sake. I say the whole earth and all the stars in the sky are for religion's sake. And I say no man has ever yet been devout enough, and none has ever yet adored or worshipped half enough, and none has begun to think how divine he himself is and how certain the future is. You hear that rhythm? And it comes naturally off my tongue as an American. But I can tell you this, I've heard English people try to read this, I've heard French or Italian people in translation, they can't get the cadence at all. Because this is American speech. This is the great American poet up until now. I say the real and the permanent grandeur of these states must be their religion. There you go, right there. Otherwise there is no real and permanent grandeur, nor character, nor life worthy the name without religion, nor land, nor man, or woman without religion. Well, it's embedded in this little poem here, a little bit of that. I don't say it's an official religion or anything like that, but you see his Americanism comes out. Now, I don't think you'll find this in Allen Ginsberg or what's that guy's name, Burroughs, and these people. They all hated this country. All they wanted was to take the benefit of it, but they didn't want to pay their dues. And okay, maybe they were trying to improve it, but they didn't really want to put in their dues. Whitman is prepared to put in his dues. And he doesn't think there is evil in the way the Christians think of evil, because he doesn't think the body is evil. He doesn't think, and that's a unique new outlook. There are other people who thought that, but no one ever put it in poetry like this and made it part of the American ethic. And I think that's how we feel it, unless someone brainwashed us to the contrary. We don't really think the body is evil, though some people tell us it is. But we don't think sex is evil. We don't think intimacy with other people is evil. People make us feel guilty about it later, so we go to confession and confess it or something like that. That's only because someone has put that into our brain. We didn't initially feel that, I don't honestly think. And Whitman is not going to let you feel that. That's why Bill Clinton gave this to Monica Lewinsky. He didn't want her to get any, well, he didn't have to work. I don't think she was feeling any inhibition about whatever services she was providing. And of course, he was nothing loath to accept it. So, but anyway, you can understand why he gave this book to. Let me see if I can find anything else from this one. I didn't tell you to read this one. Look, here's one, section 12. To earn for the body and the mind whatever adheres and goes forward. I fuse egoism and show it underlying all. I will be the bar of personality. I will show male and female that either is but the equal of the other. Men and women are totally equal. Sexual organs, acts. Do you concentrate in me, for I am determined to tell you with courageous clear voice to prove you illustrious. I'm not afraid of sex organs and sex acts. He's writing this in 1855. As Howard Stern, on the radio in 2000, whatever. I will show you there's no imperfection in the present and can be none in the future. And I will show that whatever happens to anyone, it may be turned to beautiful results. And there's that rhythm going on here. And I will show that nothing can happen more beautiful than death. And I will thread a thread through my poems. That time and events are compact, and all the things in the universe are perfect miracles, each as profound as any. And I will make a poem. And I will not make a poem, or the least part of a poem, but as reference to the soul. So every one of my poems are going to have the soul in it. Because having looked at the objects of the universe, I find there is no one or any particle of one but has reverence of the soul. Was someone asking to see the soul and so on? See your shape and countenance, person, substance, beast, trees, the running rivers, the rocks and sands. Anyway, there is a spiritual attempt to say something here. Carrying what is accrued to it from the moment of birth to the moment of death, he considers it, the immortality is in this experience it has had. And then finally on section 19, and this is not a great poem, I don't think, but it gives some idea of what he's trying to say. It's a later poem that he stuck at the beginning because he thought it was a good introduction. Oh, camarado close. The great camarado, using Spanish terminology now. What do you think he's talking about? Who's the great camarada? Well, it's the soul again. Oh, you and me at last. Oh, us two only. Oh, a word to clear one's path ahead endlessly. Oh, something ecstatic and then, but it sounds like a lover. It sounds like a sex drive is expressing here, and that's always part of it. Undemonstrable. Oh, music wild. Oh, now I triumph. Oh, yeah, he's full of these pent-up, as he says, some of his poems he calls pent-up aching rivers. And you know he's speaking about sex drives. Oh, something ecstatic and undemonstrable. Oh, music wild. Oh, now I triumph, and you also. Hand in hand, oh, wholesome pleasure. Oh, one more desire and lover. Oh, to haste firm holding, to haste on with me. So it's like a lover. So now he gets into the real poem, Celebrate, Song of Myself. I celebrate myself. Well, how did he write these poems? Well, as I said, he was born in Milan, I think around 1919 or thereabouts. He got a minor education. He became a sort of school teacher for a bit. He worked on newspapers, one called the Brooklyn Eagle, and things like that. He used to go into New York City all of the time. He gives a picture of New York in this crossing Brooklyn Ferry. That's really a great picture of a snapshot in time, right before the Civil War, when the steamboats are just coming in. He thinks that people are going to be on ferry boats generations, hundreds of years hence, experiencing what he's experiencing. Well, they're bringing the ferry boats back into the places like San Francisco Bay and New York Harbor because the commuter bridges and trains are too crowded, and they want people to have a more nature-filled or fresh experience. So you may be right. The ferry boats are coming back in some of these places. He thinks we're all going to be riding on ferry boats. So he doesn't understand that scientific development is going to move beyond where he's at. That's short of his vision. But anyway, something happened to him at some point. He was a big person for Manifest Destiny. He wanted to spread across this country. He was all part of that movement in his writings for the newspaper and stuff. But something happened and he left his jobs. And he took a mysterious trip down to New Orleans. No one knows exactly what he did down there, what went on down there. And then there's a kind of a blank part of his life. And you can ask, did he go to all the places he says he went to here? I think he did go to some of them. People think he didn't. But it sounds to me like, I think he came to California. I think he was part of the gold rush. This is around 1849 when we get this blank period. Can't prove that, but it just feels like imagines, they say he's imagining all these things. He imagines too much of the country not to have seen some of it. I wouldn't be surprised if he went to the gold rush and failed or something and then came back and started writing his poems and published them in 1855. That's, this is, campus is called the 49ers. The reason, as you probably know, we're called the 49ers is California started to populate really in a serious manner in 1849 with the gold rush. So a lot of these people came, crashing out here at that time, across the plains or wherever you want to think they came from. I wouldn't be surprised if he did get out here. He had pictures of trappers, wives, and marriages and things like that out in the plains, and maybe he imagines it and maybe he doesn't. Let's look at the first. So anyway, in 1855, he starts, well, he must have written this before that. Somewhere in the early 1850s, he starts writing these poems. And he promises to stop not till death. And he sends these poems to Emerson. And he's a poet the rest of his life. He's poor, he never has any money. Civil War comes in 1860, he goes down to the battlefields. And we've got some wonderful Civil War poems. We've got some homosexual poems here, too. Children of Adam and Calamus, full of homosexual poems. You say, well, what, homosexuality in America in 1855? Unfortunately, or fortunately, however you want to look at it? Yeah. And how come? Well, figure it out, man. I mean, where were the women available to these poor, pent-up, aching river men, as he describes himself? Well, where is his outlet? He doesn't have money to go to a prostitute, and I don't think he probably ever did go to prostitutes. Where is he going to find the place to slake whatever lust that he's feeling? And these people were thrown together all the time. Think of it. They would go to an inn, and there would be 12 men sleeping in the same bed. Or you'd be on a ship voyage and be sharing a hammock with 3 or 4 others. I mean, what the hell do you think was going on? That's just the way it was. And he's honest enough to admit it. And I'm not advocating it, but I'm just telling you that is what it was like. And he's an honest man. And the others didn't want to own up that that's what the lower class were doing. To some extent, anyway. Not everybody, obviously, but people were on the road, obviously. People were thrown together with others in places like the Army or the Navy or in inns or people, flop houses or wherever they were staying. There are no women in these places. You don't have now women in the Army, that you can have cohabitation between men and women in the camp in Iraq. That wasn't the way it was going on then. Something else was going on, and Whitman is honest about that. But he's not a dedicated person to that. He just admits that, and he loves young men as he loves young women. And he says it. He calls out to young men. And he's pretty honest about that. That's not to me the most important. So there's several ones, but if you go across here and you come along to somewhere in the middle, then the Civil War comes, and you think, well, he's gay, right? No, because you think most gays would avoid the war. No, he's not gay as we would see it gay. He's a patriot. He believes. That other aspect of his character is just an aspect. And he's for the war. And he has a whole section here of drug taps. A whole thing about 1861, there's one, and Song of the Banner at Daybreak, and then he's got one here, Cavalry Crossing a Ford, Bivouac on a Mountainside, Army Corps on the March. He's with the, by the bivouac's fitful flame. A stranger I met on the battlefield one night, a march in the ranks hard pressed, a sight in the camp at daybreak. These are all Civil War battle songs. You see, nobody knows this guy. Just an incredible poem. Wound dresser. And then he's got stuff, Dirge for Veterans, Artilleryman's Vision. I saw an old general. And then he's got a beautiful one about the Union Afro-Americans in the American Army. He has it, Ethiopia saluting the colors. And is he against it? No, he's proud of it. He's proud of it. He loves the fact that there are Afro-Americans and blacks in the armed forces, and that they're part of the effort, and he responds. So people think this is a racist country and all that sort of thing. You read Whitman, there's not a stick of racism in it. Not even a jot. And this is 1855, 1865 America. That's why I think this is great stuff. Look at this poem here, just for fun. Who are you, dusky woman, so ancient, hardly human, with your woolly white and turban hair and bare bony feet? Why raising by the roadside here do your colors greet? 'Tis what our army lines, Carolina sands and pines. Forth from the hovel door, thou Ethiopian, come sits to me, as under doughty Sherman I march towards the sea. Me master years, 100 since my parents sundered a little child, they caught me as a savage beast is caught, then hither me across the sea, the cruel slaver brought. No further does she say, but lingering all the day, her high-born turbaned head she wags and rolls her darkening eyes, and courtesies to the regiments, the giddens moving by. What is it, faithful woman, so clear, hardly human? Why wag your head with turban bound, yellow, red, and green? Are the things so strange and marvelous you see or have seen? Anyway, what he's talking about is the effect of the American armies marching through the Carolinas with Sherman and so on. But he has other ones like that. So they're all poems like that. Give me 2 more minutes and I'll let you go, if you don't mind. Let me just read you the first few lines here. Get rid of the song of myself, so you'll read it at home, and then next time we'll talk about it. Listen to the rhythm of this poem. The first poem that he sent to Emerson. I celebrate myself and sing myself, and what I assume you, this is when he's at his best, of course, when he's saying things incomparably well. And what I assume you shall assume, for every atom belonging to me as good belongs to you. I loaf and invite my soul, I lean and loaf at my ease, observing a spear of summer grass. My tongue, every atom of my blood, formed from this soil, this air, born here of parents, born here from parents the same and their parents the same. I now, 37 years old, in perfect health begin, hoping to cease not till death. Creeds and schools and bands, retiring back a while, suffice what they are, but never forgotten. I harbor for good or bad. I permit to speak at every hazard, nature without check with original energy. 2. Houses and rooms are full of perfumes. The shelves are crowded with perfumes. I breathe the fragrance myself and know it and like it. The distillation would intoxicate me also, but I shall not let it. The atmosphere is not a perfume. It has no taste of the distillation. It is odorless. It is for my mouth forever. I am in love with it. I will go to the bank by the wood and become undisguised and naked. Take off all my clothes and run down to the river. I am mad for it to be in contact with me. And now he's generating his excitement and working himself up. The smoke of my own breath, echoes, ripples, buzz, whispers, love, root, silk thread, crotch and vine, talking about his sex part. My respiration, inspiration, the beating of my heart, the passing of blood air through my lungs, the sniff of green leaves and dry leaves and of the shore and dark-colored sea rocks and of a hay in the barn, the sounds of the belched words of my voice loose to the eddies of the wind, a few light crisp kisses, a few embraces, a reaching around of arms, the play of shine and shade on the trees as the supple boughs wag, the delight alone in the rush of the streets or along the fields and the hillsides, the feeling of health and the full moon trill, the song of me rising from bed and meeting the sun. Have you reckoned 1,000 acres much? Have you reckoned the earth much? Have you practiced so long to learn to read? Have you felt so proud to get at the meaning of poems? Stop this day and night with me, and you shall possess the origins of all poems. You shall possess the good of the earth and the sun. There are millions of suns left. You shall no longer take things in second or third hand, nor look through the eyes of the dead, nor feed on the specters in books. You shall not look through my eyes either, nor take things from me. You shall listen to all sides and filter them from yourself. Anyway, he goes on like that, but as you can see, he can take nothing and start generating tremendous emotion, rhythm, and actual insight. You look at that poem and come back next time and we'll talk about it.